Well, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we've been bouncing around between the eras a little bit on Unplugged this season, mainly between the mid to late 90s and then the sort of late 70s to the late 80s. And we jump back into that era now with Joffa Cunningham, played 224 games, represented Victoria, kicked 58 goals, and one of the Ballarat crew that obviously served St Kilda so well during that period and after. Joffa, thanks for joining us.
G'day, fellas. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Going along very nicely. Now, just crystal balling a bit, when you started your career, if someone had have offered you 200 games at VFL level, but unfortunately without the club success, would you have sat there and thought 200 game one club player sounds very good, or was it sort of finals or bust at that point?
Well, back then, I never even thought I was going to play. Um, you know, uh, I had the club come and try and recruit me a couple of times with Alan Jeans coming to talk to me about my future down there, and I never showed up at the meeting twice because I thought I was, sooner go out and have a couple of drinks with the boys rather than go down. But eventually, I made it down there, and I wouldn't have even thought that I'd played two games, let alone 200.
Geoff, I saw a couple of interviews with you over the years where you spoke about how strength through loyalty and that the slogan of the footy club really resonated with you. Once you worked out what it meant, you had opportunities to leave the footy club. What was it that made you stay?
Purely the logo. I've always been a one club player, even in Ballarat. But what I just think once you get at a club and you get to know all the players, they become your mates rather than football teammates. And I just thought I'd sooner stay there than go anywhere, just because I liked it. And as you said, I used to drive into the club as a young fella and look at the big slogan that used to be on the wall, 40th Crowford-Illis. I didn't even know what it meant for a couple of years. And I asked someone, and I thought, yeah, that's, right up my alley. That sounds like me all over.
The ground that logo and that shield was on. Joffa, you would have played, and I hope I'm right in saying that's pretty much all your home games at Moorabbin. Your memories, everyone sort of who played there said it was a special and a different place to play footy, and there's a lot of people probably listening who never had the utter joy of watching a game there. So, can you just go through what made Moorabbin special for the players?
Oh, the people made Moorabbin special. It was a country feel, and the supporters and everybody that got around, especially if probably before you guys' time, but if we actually started winning, the amount of people that were in the stand that just started chanting St Kilda was phenomenal. And you go down to training a couple of nights a week, and there'd be a couple of hundred people watching you train, and you got to know most of them and most of their kids, and I just think the feel of the whole place was good. It felt like being back in Ballarat. And I wasn't big on living in the city in Melbourne, but certainly Moorabbin and the people made you feel welcome and made you feel like you wanted to stay. It was pretty hard to do.
Do you gravitate a bit towards the other Ballarat boys automatically when they come across as well? Obviously, Spud ends up captaining the club in 1987, but came in 84. Obviously, Plugger in 83. Is there that connection that automatically forms with you guys?
Oh, absolutely. And that even goes without sort of saying or anything. When I first moved down, I was living in Ballarat for probably 3 years, travelling down to train and play. And we used to come down in 3 or 4 carloads because there was about 16 or 17 of us at the time. Places like Val Perovic and Robert Muir and Donny Disher, Tweedale, Keel, all those sort of guys used to jump in. Graham Jelly as well, Jeff Dunn. And we had some pretty fun times, which was pretty good because once you got down there, you had to, being a Ballarat boy or a country kid, as the city slickers used to say to us, you had to earn your stripes. And if you didn't have the Ballarat guys to turn back on, you felt pretty out of it. Because it took you a while to get going because it was sometimes a bit of a threat to the city guys because they thought you're going to take their spot and and you sort of had to earn your stripes. But yeah, you gravitate to Unplugger and Danny come down. They were only kids. Even, Benny Alton and a few of the guys like that. You made them feel welcome because I was living in Melbourne by that stage. So you went out of your way to make all the young Ballarat guys feel at home and feel like it was their home and they had something to look forward to when they drove in the gates before heading back to Ballarat. So, yeah, you gravitate to them. And a couple of me good mates, I grew up with Gary Hodges in Ballarat. We played together and, we grew up until we were maybe 6 or 7 years old. And Burnsy, was one of my best mates and Peter Keel, of course, and all those sort of guys. So, yeah, we sort of looked after each other as much as we could.
Joffa, walking into the club, I think it was 77 when you got to the footy club. Obviously, you mentioned Jeansy was one of the ones who had recruited you and was in those meetings originally. You get to the club and Ross Smith, Brownlow medalist, is coach. What was that like, I guess, for a Ballarat boy walking into the footy club for the first time in 77? You're on match permits at the time, so before you were, I guess, a full-time player. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, Nick, it was pretty daunting. Although I said I had the attitude that I never watched a lot of VFL football when I was a kid. I think I'd only ever been to 2 games in my whole life before I'd gone down to St Kilda. But you'd heard of the names, and it was pretty daunting when you went down there. I was a Richmond supporter, and all of a sudden there was Graham Bond and Rex Hunt, and Smithy was coaching, but the following year Mike Patterson coached. So it was a pretty daunting feeling going down as a kid. I even reckon I went down the year before and done a pre-season training where I was only 17. And that was kind of a blur because I just sort of jumped in and ran around like, took without a head, to be honest, because it was fast and it was slick and it was, you had to be at your wits just to keep up with those sort of guys.
1981, Joffa, we played Collingwood at Moorabbin. The records say that you had 15 touches that day, but the day will always be remembered for Jeff Fairing's goal from, some might say the centre square, some might say the defensive 10-metre square, but, it's generally regarded as one of the longest goals ever kicked in footy. You were there that day. Do you have any memory of it as being standing on the ground as he kicked it?
Absolute massive kick. Oh, yeah, I was standing on the wing and the funny thing is when he went back and kicked it, no one was surprised he was going to kick it that far because, Jeff Fairing and Grant Thomas used to have torpedo competitions at training and it was a regular thing for him to kick the ball from the goal square and land in the centre. But when he actually got onto it, I just stood on the wing with my mouth open and think, holy geez, that's going to go through. And it did. It was just massive. And the crowd went nuts, of course.
When you think back on that era, I guess, without sounding, dramatic through that period, a lot of people look at the efforts of yourself and Greg Burns and Trevor Barker as well. Would the club potentially not exist if not for the efforts of you guys and Barks through that 80s period and the sacrifices that a lot of people made to keep the club afloat?
Yeah, pretty well on the ball there, Darren. It's, it was a really bad period for the club. And when Lindsay Fox took over, it's common knowledge now that, the club went into anybody they owed money to as, 15 cents in the dollar or 25 cents in the dollar. And a lot of people lost a lot of money. But there was also talk of mergers. And I think there was talk of us merging with somebody, I don't know whether it was Fitzroy or something, and vice versa. But we were really struggling as a club. I worked at the club for a while and we couldn't buy anything. We couldn't buy fertiliser or seed unless we had cash because, checks were bouncing. They had no money. So we were really, really struggling. And to get players to come to us was a hard thing to do because there was just nothing for them there. And there was no incentive because we were sort of losing games. But, yeah, it was a pretty tough period. And I think, because of not only me and Barks and Burnsy and every player that played in that era, whether they played one game or, 200 games, every player put in to help that club survive. and we were getting some fairly heavy smashings, in defeats, but guys just kept fronting up every week. And, I got reminded in 81, I don't know where we come on the ladder, but Simon Meehan one day was talking to me and reminded me that in 1981, 18 out of the 22 games, at three-quarter time, we were either in front or within a couple of goals of winning the game. And, most of those games we ended up getting beaten by 8 or 9 goals. So, it was a tough ask, but, credit to everybody. And I admire everyone that played in that era because they just done it so hard and, with little reward.
Geoff, a bit of a two-parter from me. You mentioned that you were working at the club. I did hear that at one stage you were working as part of the grounds crew at Moorabbin. Did you have anything to do with the overnight watering of the ground? And did you do that to help yourself? Because that was part of your game, that you might have been a little bit better on the rough turf. But I guess the second part of that question is, during that period when we were not doing a lot of winning, and I think we won 4 or 5 wooden spoons through that period. But how hard is it, I guess, as a member of the playing group to keep getting up each week to turn up and play?
Well, firstly, the first part of your question was, I was working on the ground crew when that particular incident happened. I think Tony Jewell and Ian Stewart came down to the sheds, and Brett, who was in charge then, I think he's only just retired after 40 years, Brett.
Mm-hmm.
They've come down and they've said to Brett, we want to put a little bit of water on the ground. How do you control the sprinkler system? So Brett went into this elaborate discussion on what they're supposed to do and this and that. And of course, they've gone down there at 9 o'clock or what at night and tried to turn the sprinkler system on. And of course, forgot what to do and buggered it up. So I thought, this is not working. So they've got out there and they've put the hoses on the ground. And from what I believe, they've gone down and bought a slab each and set up in the grandstand and kept putting the sprinklers out until they drank the slab each and gone home. And of course, in the middle of the night, when they've adjusted the sprinklers, they've adjusted them and they've come on at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. So they've got a double dose of water. And I think we're playing Richmond on the Saturday. And it was a beautiful day. It was probably about 23 degrees, and we got out there and the ground was like a quagmire. And they were sandblasting the grandstand at the stage, and the Richmond Cheer Squad were putting all this sand on the ground. And we just going, what's going on here? Anyway, as it turned out, we only got beat by 10 goals instead of 15, so it saved us a 5-goal deficit.
Good for percentage. Yeah. Good for percentage.
Yeah, that's it. Second part of the question, I suppose, it's always difficult to come up when you're losing, but the quality of guys we had there, we kind of put it in the back of our minds because you have to get on with next week. We always thought we were a chance to win, and as long as we played well, we just didn't have the depth of players to match the Hawthorns and the Essendons and Carltons and the likes of that. But if we come away playing well, we weren't happy with the result, but we were content that there's some hope there for us. If we didn't play well, then it was a lot more difficult to come up. But everybody helped everybody, during the week. You lift your spirits up, and you just had to keep going, because if you didn't keep going, mate, what was the point of being there?
Joffa, in 1983, your brother Darryl joined the club, and you got to play with him, which not a lot of people get to play with their brothers at AFL level in the same side. Two-part question from me again. What was that like, playing beside him at VFL level? And secondly, there's a lovely potentially urban myth doing the rounds amongst Saints fans of sort of my era, that Darryl may or may not have taken a swing at Plugger at an intra-club game. Can you confirm or deny that?
Well, the first part, before Darryl came down, I was Geoff Cunningham. Then when he came down, I was Darryl's brother. Because he was a pretty good footballer, Darryl. But every time I had a chance to play with any of my brothers, I got 6 brothers and a sister, and they're all fantastic. And to have one of them play at the highest level with you was just phenomenal. I just loved every minute of it, and we protected each other. There's no hidden fact that we protected each other a little bit. But he could play. I don't think he played enough. I think he could have played a lot more. It's just unfortunately we had a lot of player probably in his quality and height and ability, but he was fantastic. He was a fantastic player. I don't know about the bit about him taking a swing at player. Could have done, but I didn't have to go in and help, so I probably don't think he did. But when Plugger moved down, he lived with Plugger for 2 years, I think. They lived together, so they were pretty good mates. But no, I'm not sure about that one.
83, 84, played for Victoria 4 times in 2 years. Yourself, Simon Madden and Robbie Flower were the only 3 players that played all of those games during that period. What was it like representing Victoria on that big stage and getting that recognition as to obviously how good your form had been? You go and play State of Origin when State of Origin was a big deal.
Yeah, it was a pretty big honour. I loved State of Origin. If they say finals was anything like playing State of Origin, well, then I missed out on something big, because Origin was fantastic. The whole concept of it was, when it was going, was nothing better. It's like the NRL. Unfortunately, it's gone and it'll never come back, I don't think. But when it was happening back then, it was fantastic. To play with the best of the best from other clubs, you just learned so much. And it was something that I'd learned, and you try and take it back and instill that into a couple of guys at the club, a couple of kids, you learn so much off those guys. It was phenomenal. Teddy Whitten was a character within himself. But yeah, it was pretty good. I couldn't recommend Origin football was any better than that.
Geoff, I want to take you back to, I think it was 1986. Now, as we record this, Callum Wilkie is about to play his 123rd consecutive game for the footy club. Late 1986, I think you made it to 99 consecutive games, and then you got dropped. Now, I think at the time there were 2 players that had played 100 consecutive games for St Kilda. One of them was Ian Sinman, who holds the record that Cal Wilkie's going to equal this week, and Stuart Trott was the other one. And I believe he was chairman of selectors at the time, and there is a rumour that potentially he dropped you because he didn't want you equaling that record. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, well, probably, to be honest. I didn't really realise what was coming up when it was coming up. Everybody was telling me about it. But look, what really happened in the background, I don't know. Maybe not. People keep telling me different stories about it. I'd hate to say, yeah, it was true, because I wouldn't want to put Trotty on the spot or anything. I certainly, what I do know, and a good friend of mine by the name of Bruce Eva is very big on statistics. And Bruce let me know one day that the week before that, we played Fitzroy and we got smashed. And I think I had probably about 5 possessions, but along with another dozen players. The 3 weeks before that, I was best on ground on 2 of them and had 20-odd possessions in the other. Now, I didn't even have to look that up because Bruce Eve is fairly accurate in what he says.
Yep.
So if the justification, I didn't understand why at the time, but, it is what it is, and it's, 35 years later, so it doesn't really matter much. But, yeah, I couldn't tell you here nor there whether – pardon?
I was just asking, have you ever spoken to Trotty about it?
No, I haven't seen Trotty since probably the day I left retired. No, I haven't sort of come across his path. Maybe one day when I catch up to him, I'll have a chat to him about it. I don't like to bring up old stuff, mate. It's no good for anybody. It's it's water under the bridge now and it's history. So let it be, I suppose.
Fair enough.
Joffa, your retirement in 1989, you retired the same time as another bloke who I used to go and watch yourself and Greg Burns play every week. You were the, two of my favourite players to go down to Moorabbin and watch every week. Do you still see Bucky Burns at all?
Yeah, I've seen him every now and then because I live in Queensland now. So, getting back to Snake Valley is probably not on the radar because, and to find Burnsy these days, it's pretty difficult. He's a bit like Plugger. He's a bit hard to get hold of. But, he dropped in, I don't know, about 18 months ago. He was just on the road just knocked on the door and said, "Hey, mate, I'm here." Spent a couple of days and then went home. But what a fantastic bloke, can't speak more highly of Burnsy. He's pound for pound, I reckon he's one of the best footballers St Kilda's ever had. I don't think he got enough credit. Left or right foot, you wouldn't know what, tough as leather boots, mate. He'd get hit, he never complained or whinged. Matter of fact, I'll tell you a quick tale about Burnsy. He said to me one day, he said, "Listen, Geoff," he said, "we're playing Carlton, and he says, it's payback day." He said, "Don't go too far away from me." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Oh, Jimmy Buckley broke my nose last year." And he said, "It's time for payback." And I said, "Look, whatever you do, mate, make sure I'm close by. I don't want to have to run the whole length of the ground, when something happens." So a few quarters went by, nothing happened. Third quarter, the old Carlton ground down by the scoreboard, ball's gone out of bounds. I've run over. I heard the crowd go, "Whoa," and I thought, "Oh, here it is." Turned around, there's 6 or 7 Carlton blokes on top of Burnsy, right across the other side of the ground in a half-foot flank. I've taken off, I've gone across, get there and he's abused me. "Where have you been?" He said. "I thought you'd be close." Rah, rah, rah. Anyway, the next day we had state training. So we've turned up and that was at Princess Park. So I'm in the Carlton rooms and I'm getting changed. Bag drops beside me. Jimmy Buckley plonks himself beside me. I've looked over. I've gone, "Oh, geez, that doesn't look too good." His nose was smelling his ear. And I've gone, "What happened there?" And he's gone, "Burnsy, it's the one he owed me. Forget about it. Let's go." So never complained about a thing. And Burnsy never said anything after that. It was just, But as far as footballers go, 2 times best and fairest, just such a fantastic football.
I love those stories of the mental receipts that get written through that era. Now, post your footy career, I remember my dad sort of telling me about you actually got you down. He used to run the Gippsland supporters group, and you were a guest when you were coaching Terrelgan in that post period. So we had you down at a couple of functions, but you went to Terrelgan and won a bucket load of flags, and they ended up getting promoted into the VFA. Such was their success. But how rewarding was it for you, given the toils at St Kilda, to go and have some final success as a coach?
Yeah, is Carl your dad?
Ken is my dad. Ken Parkin.
Ken, yeah. I think I might have chairman their first meeting they ever had.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. Look, it was pretty good. And when you say success, it come all at once. Like we're in 6 premierships in a row and won 4 of them. Probably should have won 5 of them, but Brian Royal in his second year at Leongatha gave us a smashing. But yeah, it was really good and different. When they say success breeds success, well, it's kind of true in a sense. But Terrelgan were pretty good, and because we were so successful, and the guys could pretty well play in Gippsland. The Gippsland Football League at that stage was very, very strong. And yeah, we got promoted to the VFL, and that was massive reward for the Traralgon Football Club. But unfortunately, the Latrobe Football League didn't really support it. That's why it only lasted 2 years. They didn't get on board, and they left it all to the Traralgon Football Club themselves, which, being so far away from Melbourne, it took a lot to recruit retiring AFL or VFL players at the time. Whereas North Ballarat, they were in the competition as well, and they were getting a lot of players because they were only an hour, they were 10 minutes away from them, so it was a lot easier to recruit them to go down there. But yeah, it was pretty successful. I think I ended up playing the first year in the VFL, and then I decided to hang the boots up because it started getting a little bit hard to play and coach coaching at the country level was okay, but then in the VFL you're stepping up another couple of grades, so it was starting to get a little bit tougher to chase blokes.
Joffa, we're a number of decades since the end of your career. You mentioned Bruce Eva a little bit earlier. Another one, probably the greatest St Kilda historian, Russell Holmesby, has written about you and added you to a number of his lists, one of which is the 9 greatest cult heroes that he wrote for saints.com.au. Obviously, you had a great rapport with Saints fans during your time, and the Animal Enclosure loved you running down the wing. But obviously, the Heroes with Halos, St Kilda's 100 greatest players, he included you on that list. I guess this far out from your career, but what does it mean to have that as your legacy, I guess, at the footy club, to be one of the 100 greatest players and to be, a fan favourite of so many who watched you through that decade and that period?
Oh, it's an enormous privilege to have that, and I thank Russell for putting me in that. I mean, he could have put anybody in it, but that to be on that list is pretty special because there's a lot of good players, a lot of good footballers in St Kilda. I've never classed myself in that category, but one thing I always did was always acknowledge the supporters off the field. I'd go and have a beer with them because they're the ones that come and see you each week, and they're the ones that bump you up. When you get beat by 15 goals and go to the social club, they're the ones that still pat you on the back and say g'day. Bruce Eva, I think Bruce's mum introduced Bruce to me when he was about a 14 or 15-year-old, and I took him into the club rooms, and we were sort of mates then. But since I've finished, godfather to his son, and we're probably the best of mates still. I've been trying to get on to Bruce all day today, actually, to have a bit of a chat about Saturday's game, but he's busy with broadcasting last night and so on and so on. But just everybody I've met, fantastic people. I couldn't meet them. The Days, Georgie Day, and that took my young bloke under his wing, and just people like that. Even Kenny Whiffen. Kenny Whiffen was like my father. My father died when I was a younger fella, and Kenny took me under his wing, and I sort of was around his place most weekends, on Sundays for breakfast. But, Les Griff, I could, if I started naming people, I'd just leaving people out, which I don't really want to do because everybody treated me exceptionally well when I went over there, and they treated most players. But, and I don't know why. I just went out and played how I played, whether it was good or bad or indifferent. It's up to the fan to have their own opinion on that. But I really appreciated what they done for me off the field, especially after games. They sort of buck you up a little bit.
Last one from me, Joffa. It sort of leads on from Nick's question. You still kept tabs on the current day side and get along to see them when they're playing up in Queensland?
We're going Friday night. Don't know if this podcast going to air, but I'm going up to watch them play Brisbane Friday night. They're a little bit difficult to watch at the moment. I'd like to see a lot of goals kicked in games of football. And, it doesn't matter if the defense wavers a little bit, as long as we kick more goals than the others, we, I'm not there, so I don't know what their game plan is. But yeah, I follow them. I'm still a massive St Kilda supporter. But they're just a little bit frustrating sometimes at the moment. I'd like to see us, kicking up around the 15 or 16 goal mark. If we're doing that, we're winning games. If we're kicking under 10, we're, and last week's game was, I don't know. And everyone's got their own opinion. It's only my opinion. I thought it was a pretty ugly game of footy to watch. It was pretty hard to take.
We're one of very few clubs, I think, where you can win games and feel frustrated, and we seem to be in that boat a little bit. But Joffa, it's been great. Yeah, absolutely. It's been great reminiscing, and the love for the club is, I think, something that we all share, and it's terrific that we had warriors like yourself through that period when things weren't always going great, that obviously gave Saints fans a reason to smile, and in many respects a reason why they're still here. So yeah, we appreciate all you did for the club during that time.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate the time for having me on. It's good. I don't get to talk football a lot, and it was good to go back a couple of years and see all the new young faces, on the podcast and all that. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.